the Rangers Journal Line.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Ross Graham. I'm your host for this evening. We're going to be talking through the weekend's action. A disappointing end to a disappointing season, I think it's safe to say. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to invite Gary, a referee, on to talk through a few of the decisions from the weekend, and we'll have a bit of a to and fro on those and see kind of where we get to. To talk it through, we have got Dino. Dino, I would ask how you are. I'm guessing you feel the same as I do, but looks like the sun's shining where you are now. How are you getting on, mate?
Yeah, it's nice and bright, mate. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah,
Back for the result. We're good.
Yeah, look, it was good to be in Glasgow. Always nice to soak up the atmosphere on the day, but yeah, as I say, disappointing, and it's kind of summed up our season, really. Mitch, how are you keeping, mate?
Delighted to be here for the first time, and weekend aside, we're pretty good.
Good. Well, don't let that get you down too much, because we're gonna have a cathartic session here where we can get it all out and leave it on the table. Mitch, great to have you on board. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the action this weekend. So what I wanted to do first of all, lads, was probably just talk through a bit about the starting lineup. I think it's fair to say Clement's hands have been tied for the past few months. He's had to make a lot of difficult decisions about who he plays and where he plays them, both through injury, through falling out of favour, and then I guess through one eye on potentially moves next year and who he kind of wants to promote through the team at this stage. So just to run it through, it was Butland, Tavernier, Balogun, Davies and Yilmaz. Diamonde and Raskin getting a rare start together in midfield. Sterling out on the right, Cantwell in the 10, Silva on the left, and Dessers up top. Dino, do you think that was just probably the strongest and I guess most formidable opposition we could play?
Yeah. Other than I'd suggested on Friday starting Sima and putting Sima in, but other than that, really, that is definitely the strongest team that I reckon that we could have played. Maybe Sima for Silva would have been the only sort of maybe change I would have made, or and I think a lot of the time we were actually, there was a lot of time when we did go into 4-3-3 and Sterling did play maybe more of a narrower role and closer to Dio and Raskin, but yeah, we'll obviously get into that, but it was definitely the strongest team, I think.
Yeah, and Mitch, I mean, you saw the starting lineup come out. What were your first thoughts?
Do you know, I don't think there was a lot of surprises within the starting lineup. Ben Davies, for my money, since he's come into the team, he's performed pretty solidly. He's been pretty solid, if not spectacular, which is all you need your centre back to be. I think he's also, the only call you could have maybe argued would be, do you put Diamande up top, drop Todd and put somebody else like Sterling in the engine room alongside Raskin? But I feel like Seema was always probably going to be a second half player. And I will say it was nice to see Yilmaz in the starting lineup despite everything that we were told.
Mitch has got a visitor.
I do indeed have a visitor. There we go. Off you pop them. Go get him. Just wondering what Dad's doing there.
Got you.
But yeah, I would say Seema for me was always going to be a second half player. Whether that was going to be in place of Silva or in place of Dessers, I think the injury to Dessers will always ask that massive what if question, but I wasn't overly surprised by the lineup.
Yeah. I think, fair reflection on that starting lineup. I think for me, the only thing I would have thought is maybe McCausland had done enough recently to warrant a start. The guy had looked very bright, very hungry. Two things which you clearly need going into an Old Firm, especially that it's a Scottish Cup final. So that would have been the only one for me. Just to run through the bench, interestingly enough, Clement did talk about potentially looking at risking a few players or playing players that maybe weren't 100% fit. Seema, Matondo, Scott Wright, McCausland and Lundstrom, all of whom came on. McCrory, Cole McKinnon, Kieran Dowell and Ryan Jack also on the bench who never made an impact. Looking at those subs and the impact that Matondo has had on Old Firm games this season, notably the 3-3 at Ibrox, do you think it just would have been probably too much too soon for him, Dino, just to probably start him on that wing.
Definitely. There wasn't any sort of, I don't think there'd be any Rangers fan that would have said that Matondo should be starting. So, by all accounts, this year alone, he's done enough to, warrant a place on the bench and make the sub appearance. And, I even advocated for him to start after the sort of two spectacular goals, Hibs and Celtic respectively. So I'd said he'd, should get starts and, consistency being in the team, but he's in and out of the team and things like that. Scottish Cup final, definitely given what a lot of people say, he is an impact player, isn't he? And he's a lot better coming off the bench than he is starting. So yeah, definitely him on the bench was the thing.
I think to probably echo that as well, I think again he's another walking into the final. We knew when we seen his name in the team sheet, he probably had 30-35 minutes tops in the legs, given how long he's been out for. I think if we played him from the start and it went wrong, it's far too big a gamble injury-wise going into next season, and potentially even any potential moves out and things like that for him as well. Not saying that that's where he should go, but you have to ask the risk and reward situation at that point when you've got a fully fit Silva already there.
Yeah. No, it's a fair comment. I think, as I said before, Clement did mention that there was a few that he could have maybe tinkered with and risked. I think probably bringing Sima on when he did at the very start of the kind of second half there was probably a little earlier than he would have liked to have played him. But look, it nearly came to with a kind of great reward with that, which I'm sure we'll come on to soon. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening on the Rangers Journal. I am going to pose a question to the panel later on of the starting lineup. Who do you think we should be keeping next year? And also we'll talk through the bench as well. So have a think about that one, guys. If you've got any thoughts or comments, please do put them in the chat. And we'll come back to that later on. Dino, just a quick one for you, mate. Watching the first half, I found myself almost thinking that this was a different Rangers team to probably the ones that we've seen in the past few weeks. There was a bit more hunger. Whilst we weren't creating clear-cut chances, we're also stemming them quite a bit, which I think has been the key frustration in this fixture so far this year. We've been a goal down or two before we've even had time to kind of, fix our shin pads in place properly. What was your take on the first half? Do you think it was quite close, or where was your head at?
I mean, for the 90 minutes, we were the better team, so on the first half game, I think reflecting on it, we'd did everything that every Rangers fan's been crying out for in that fixture in the season and just in general. I mean, even like Silva, who looked like previously he's wanting out, couldn't be bothered. I actually thought he had a good game. It was just, he's not like, defensively minded, but he was, trying to do as much as he could defensively as well. And it was just sort of wee things I was like that taken away from it, that, so there was a switch in the whole team mentality, and that mentality is what we've been crying out for, the change, isn't it? And I think if you look at it, we've not played like that against Celtic for. I actually can't remember the last time we were the better side for the full 90 minutes against Celtic. I generally can't. I'd love somebody in the comments to educate me on that, please, because I really can't. It seems a minute since the last time that we were so. When we got to half time, I mean, I was sitting with Scotty and a couple of friends, and we were like, this is like I was saying Scotty half time, I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm really, really confident and hopeful that that this game is going to be ours, and obviously it didn't end up that way. But I said on Friday night, I would want, if we get beat, I want us to hold our heads high with how we played, and I believe we can be proud of the team for that. And when they came off at half time, we were the ones with the shoulders back and with the swagger, which has been a long time since that's happened. Yeah. So going into half time, I was confident that we would get the win.
Yeah. exactly the same as me. Mitch, I'll come to you just in one sec. I think confidence breeds confidence, right? And when you can depend on your defensive unit to perform, that gives confidence throughout the team. And I guess that is something that we've really missed. Just having that solidity, maybe it's a bit more vocal or whatever it was, it felt as though that defensive unit was very solid, and it did, but eventually came to a mistake, really, in essence, that led to their goal. Mitch, Dean touched on it there, and it was quite an interesting point. He said it felt like a switch had turned on in this game slightly, and the mentality was different. Do you think this was because it was a cup game, a final, a one-off, or do you think that Clement has managed somehow to kind of pull something out of the fire and galvanise this team?
I think it's a two things can be true situation.
Yeah.
I think tactically having Raskin at the base made a huge difference. He offers a lot more mobility, and he offers passing the ball forward as opposed to sideways backwards all the time. He's constant, but he's also more comfortable. For Mamory, I would say he's far more comfortable with the ball at his feet than, say, a John Lundstrom is. But I would also say defensively, every man to a T stood up and knew what their job was. We didn't see, probably for Mamory, I would have liked to have maybe seen Yilmaz bobbing forward a wee bit more. But as the game progressed, you understand why he didn't. He was basically told, your job is to stay within your own half. Should there be an opportunity to run forward, by all means go and support. But first and foremost, keep the door closed. I think probably as well for Mamory as well, one of the big things we've done better this game than what we've done in the last couple of Old Firms in particular would be we probably choked out the Celtic midfield. Maeda was pretty much non-existent for most of the game. Callum McGregor probably spent most of the game being an angry little sock puppet for most of the game, but without having a huge amount of influence over the actual game itself. And I feel like it was a bit more sturdy within that midfield, and I think probably most of that for Mamory would have came from Raskin and everybody else kind of stepping up to the plate a bit more as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There definitely felt like there was something about the team that made it a lot more solid. And it's one of those strange things as a Rangers fan. You can scream at your TV all you want, but the amount of times that we've seen the midfield of Celtic dominate a game, and the previous game at Celtic Park there, where O'Reilly had 3 or 4 chances to pick up the ball in acres of space at the edge of the box, and it seems so obvious to us sat there saying, just put someone on him, whether it's Sterling, whether it is a Raskin and industrious player in there. I would say I think the leadership that probably Lundstrom brought at times, we maybe didn't have on the pitch in terms of just the sort of structure moving forwards. But, with that comes a weakness, and we'll probably come on to Lundstrom's performance later on, or lack of. So look, we went in at halftime. Dean, you said it as well. I think there was a confidence in the fans, in the players. It looked like there was a real genuine chance that we could do something here and sort of turn the tide and set the precedent for next year and what a Rangers performance should look like. The start of the second half, very much like the first half, Rangers dictating play again and building something and feeling like we were on the cusp of something. Dessers went off and Seema came on. I believe now that that's come out that it's a muscle tear or a muscle injury, which could potentially be quite a long-term injury. Scotty's not watching this or on the pod, so we can all say that Dessers will be missed. I'm not sure he'll miss him, but we will certainly for the time being. Dino, what do you think Clement would have said at halftime there to kind of continue that momentum or continue the belief? Because that Celtic are going to create chances. They're going to have half chances. That's just what they do. They have a nature about them that they do continue to, unfortunately, the 90th minute and beyond, which turned out pivotal. But what do you think he would have said at halftime?
I think he would have turned around and said that he was proud of them, and just basically said more of the same, and it will come. Do persevere with what you're doing. That's pretty much what I think he would have said to them, because I turned and said to Scotty, would you change anything? And it's like, not like, wouldn't change anything at all. And every single Old Firm game recently, you'd be like, I would change this, change that, change this, change that. Do you know? Whereas that halftime came, you're like, there's actually nothing that we can change to make ourselves in with a better chance of winning. So in that respect, he's got to turn around and say that he's, proud of the players for playing the way that he wants them to play, and for, believing in themselves, and go out and have and more of the same, please. That's pretty much, I think. I don't think there would be much to have even been said, really, because I mean, tactically, there was here and there was maybe a lack of understanding the tactics at times, but that's fine. It's a cup final, Old Firm.
Yeah.
I think probably the only thing you would have maybe said on top of that would have been, okay, now we've balanced the game, we've got it by the scruff of the neck, let's push it forward a little bit. But again, much like Dino, I don't see that he would have said a huge amount different, other than, again, maybe let's just get up in their faces a little bit more.
Yeah. And look, I think there's a very fine line between committing and throwing players forward when you're still, the game's slightly in the balance, and being resilient at the back and making sure that we're solid. And we've got a real stable defensive unit that we clearly had in the first half. What happened next was, it's definitely divided the Rangers support and support across Scottish football. And I'm really happy that we've got Gary here, who is a referee. I'm going to add him to the stage now. Gary, thanks for joining us this evening on Rangers Journal. How are you?
Very well, chaps. Yourselves?
Good,
all
mate.
Good, thank you. Good. And now, the reason that we've got Gary on here is not to throw darts at him or to chuck any wild, ridiculous, lucid conspiracy theories his way. Gary's going to take quite an objective view on what was quite a polarizing incident that happened on the 60-minute mark. So James Tavernier, from a Rangers corner, crossed the ball into the box, and there did seem to be a number of players stood in on top of Joe Hart. The ball then bounced at the back post and came off Seema's knee, I think it was, and sort of slowly trickled over the line. Initially, obviously, there was a huge roar, and a lot of the Rangers players were wildly celebrating, much like the fans. The game was then brought back. VAR advised Walsh to take a look at the monitor, in which he ruled off the goal, and it was back to scratch each. Gary, I just wanted to. I've brought these images up, and excuse me if they are maybe a bit leading in in the viewing, but when I was watching this, there seemed to me as though there was a real jostling of players in and around the box, both Rangers and Celtic. The top left image shows Raskin being held. The top right image is the next one along, which then shows him having made the push. Again, you can see that he's being held. And then the bottom image there is kind of all sorts of madness taking place in that split second within the Celtic 6-yard box. I mean, Gary, try and make some sense of this for me. What do you think happened there?
I've seen it back a few times, Ross, and for me, I wouldn't be getting involved. You see this kind of thing at every single corner. This is probably a bit more extreme because of the way the deliveries were coming in. Obviously, an intentional tactic from Rangers to put right on top of Joe Hart. So, for me, you're always going to get players jostling the goalkeeper, and you're always going to get defensive players trying to prevent that happening. So, there's going to be a natural coming together all the time. I don't see anything within this goal that says that should be given as a foul. But having said that, if you're going to take the opinion that there's been an obvious shove on the back of Joe Hart, which has put him under the ball, the flight of the ball, and they might have got a hand to it otherwise, I think you have to take into account everything else that's went on beforehand, whether it's infringements on the Rangers players. So for me personally, I wouldn't have got involved. Goal stands. But if you're going to take the opinion it's a foul, then I think it should be a penalty to the Rangers beforehand.
Yeah.
If you're kind of inconsistent with what you're judging a foul to be in the context.
And lads, I'll come to the panel in just one sec. I just want, for clarity for the viewers at home and for myself, if there is a series of incidents that are potentially free kicks, so one being at arms round a player, one being a push, one being a trip, whatever that would be, if they are in a consecutive sequence, does it naturally have to be the first incident that is brought back? So I guess my question is, if Raskin is being held and they then look at that in VAR, they see that Raskin, yes, probably does use two, he runs a risk, doesn't he? But he puts two hands on the player. He runs a risk that will be called back, especially as Joe Hart is naturally moving towards the front post off his own volition. And he runs the risk that is accentuated by using both hands on his back. When they look at the VAR of that, could they then say, actually, we were reviewing the potential free kick on Hart, but actually we have seen before that Greg Taylor's arms around Raskin doing the tango?
Personally, for me, I don't think the Raskin one's the most egregious within this, because in these kind of scenarios, what to take into account is likelihood of getting on the end of the ball. So if this is happening at the edge of the 18, for example, it's not entirely relevant. So because you could be giving fouls all day long if you didn't do that, which is fair enough. For me, the front post jostling with Liam Scales, Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think it's Leon Balogun and Ben Davies, they're directly in front of Joe Hart. So if you're taking the opinion Joe Hart has a chance of getting on that ball, but he's pushed under it, then those two Rangers attackers also have the chance to get in the end of that ball. So I'd say that's what the greater infringement is. I don't think Raskin's getting on that ball. Regardless if Hart flaps it or not, I think it's going over the path of them. But the two at the front post have a good chance of getting a knock on of that or something, if it's taken into consideration that Joe Hart is also going to get a touch on it. Personally, I don't think the touch infringes Hart that much. I think he's gone under it anyway.
Yeah.
But again, if you're taking that opinion, then you also have to consider the context. I think what happens in these scenarios is, and I've seen it happen in Scotland, England, and Europe, they get a little bit of tunnel vision on one particular incident and don't focus on the surrounding context. I think that's what's happened here.
Yeah. Mitch, Dino, Mitch, I'll come to you first. What was your kind of take on it at the time? And I guess second to that, have you got any questions further to that for Gary?
So my take on it was actually correct to lock the goal and chop it off. Now, going back to what Gary was saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with Balogun and Carter-Vickers. They're two big units tussling for it at the front post. Scales on Ben Davies, you could probably argue Ben Davies has been impeded by Liam Scales. But the minute Raskin puts his hands on the keeper, he always runs that risk of the goal getting chopped off for conduct on the keeper. But did he touch him hard enough to knock him off saving it? Probably not. But by letter of the law, he's touched the keeper. He's left himself open for it to be locked off. I actually think it's probably one of the few instances that were called properly. That's kind of where I stand on it. I think Raskin, the minute he touched Joe Hart, he ran that risk. And when you run the risk in a high-profile game like that, you leave a decision to be made, and that comes down to somebody else's interpretation of what happens.
Dino, what's your take on
it? Pretty much the same as Gary. Seen and asked him in the group chat as well. Done it, so I was just a bit thinking about it. And I think, because there's a bit of confusion going on as to what actually happened with VAR and their awarding of it, and then did they get overruled? So there's lots of room for argument in that one situation. So it's not as if it was a clear-cut foul only by Raskin on Hart. There was a multitude of fouls within the space of a second or two, isn't there? So that then begs the question as to why is that decision being given? I know Gary had said there, tunnel vision, and I never actually really looked like that. So I was just actually, casting memories back to things that have happened, Scotland, England, and Europe, and there has been loads of times over the years where referees have done that, and there has been other fouls, so you've got to maybe think that's just the nature of the beast. But it just it seems a bit, as a Rangers fan, again, we've had a goal disallowed for a questionable officiating decision. So I think that's where therein lies the problem for us Rangers fans of, this is happening quite a lot. And if that, one thing that Gerrard always used to say, he would get asked about decisions going against the team, and he would say, "He just wants consistency," and that's one thing I think that has to be implemented in Scotland, because that's that's where we play our football. We play in Europe sometimes, but in Europe, that's irrelevant at this moment in time. There has to be consistency within our game, and if that's a foul, then you've got to give fouls every single game. Like Gary said, you're going to be constantly probably blowing that whistle, aren't you? Because that's happening all the time, and it just doesn't happen professionally. It happens all the way down to amateur level, so all the way through. It's every single corner, every single sort of free kick that's in and around that area, that there's the balls coming into the box. It's a constant in every game that I've ever watched in my life. So
I have a question for Gary, if Gary doesn't mind.
Oh, of course not, mate.
Do you think having VAR linked up with audio communication, like that can be fed back to the studios, or at least that as a viewer you can hear, do you think that probably would help at least understand how VAR and the assistant officials have got to certain decisions? Not necessarily this particular one, but as an overall kind of concept.
I do think it would be better if they could hear it post-match. I don't know if it's a great idea doing it live, to be honest, because there can be, at times, obviously there's a time precedent on it as well, so there can be a lot of rush and a little bit of sort of almost panicky sounding within the voice. But I think that's just due to the kind of pressure on the speed to come to the decision. I've never really heard any of the Scottish ones put out to the media. But I've heard a few of the English Premier League ones, and looking at the feedback from the clubs involved, it does tend to calm a lot of the conspiracy theories, if you like. Obviously, the Tottenham-Liverpool one being the exception. Everyone spoke about that one was a carnage, basically. But every other one I've heard seems to actually, clarify it in the fans' minds, even those with the decisions going against.
So for myself, like I'm an ex-rugby player myself, so I'm used to obviously VAR on the rugby pitch. It's very clear, communicated. Fans watching at home, and around the stadium, you can kind of hear. Obviously, the technology's been in rugby now for nearly a decade now.
Yeah,
and everybody's very comfortable with it. If there's something that needs to be looked at, you can hear the video assistants say, "We would like to take a look at incident X in the build-up, or something has happened that we would like you to take a look at, Mr. Referee." And I think even just having that notification to say, "Okay, we would like to take a look at something," even on the part, I think it would just, as you say, maybe calm some of the nonsense from not just in Scotland, but I think across all the leagues in the UK and across Europe.
No, I don't disagree with me. And obviously, I watch a good bit of rugby myself, and I'm a big NFL fan. Now, they've had video review technology going back to the 90s. Obviously, there's a lot more money involved in that than Scottish football, and all the stadiums are immaculate, so they've got the big jumbotrons that can display all this stuff a lot better for the fans. But the chat, I think it's been discussed already. I think I shared it on the group chat with you guys, so you'd know. There's a challenge system coming into play, where the onus would be on the managers themselves to challenge a decision rather than it being just randomly if the VAR ref spots it or not. So I think that'll help calm a lot of it, and I think it'll breed a little bit more honesty in the game as well. If clubs are potentially penalised for wasting a challenge on something that the defender, if you take a penalty dive situation, I think that would almost eliminate that right away. But I do agree there has to be more comms within the stadium. In a Scottish context, I don't quite know how it would work, because obviously Ibrox, Parkhead, Hampden have got the technology to do that. But if you look at the likes of Dundee or Ross County or something, there's nothing there to really communicate to the fans. There's no screens, there's nothing.
I don't know if that maybe becomes a separate argument that, maybe the bigger clubs like ourselves and Celtic put together a bit of a fund to help obviously modernise certain aspects of the stadiums like that. But I don't know if that's maybe a bit too forward thinking for, some members of the fan base, i.e. a certain portion, like 2% of European revenue kept aside to help modernise other stadiums, which in theory produces better quality.
Going off topic a wee bit, I'd rather that money was used for the playing surfaces, to be honest, because I think
Absolutely.
that impacts the quality of the game and what we're projecting to the rest of the world in terms of viewing it. And it just looks absolute amateurish at times when you see some of the grounds. So I agree with you. I don't think it's a bad point, but I think in terms of priorities, I would put that a wee bit further down the list and just get the quality of the game improved first, personally.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
mate.
I think a wise decision would be to get Neil Doncaster to get that factored into the Sky contract, that there needs to be some funding towards that, because Sky will benefit as well, and it'll make it'll make the quality of the game more watchable and more engaging for viewers at home and in the stadium. So, Gary, I just wanted to bring you back to this incident here. There's been occasions where, and I remember the Rangers goal that we'd scored in the 3-3 draw at Ibrox, when the game got brought back for an instant in the Celtic half. Tom Lawrence had rightly, it should have been a free kick at the time. The ball then went through various phases of play, arguably, and then Dessers scored, which was then cancelled. My question to you would be, if this hadn't have been put in by Seema and a player at the back post had have cleared it, and the ball comes to the edge of the box and, say, Tavernier shoots and it goes in, would that have been brought back for the push?
Honest answer, I don't know. Within the sub protocol, it probably should be, because it's not necessarily just losing possession, it's the defence's ability to recover post foul, if you like. So taking the Tom Lawrence foul at Ibrox, I think it's Fabio Silva picked up the ball and drove straight to the edge of the Celtic 18. At that point, there was never really an opportunity where the ball went sideways a couple of times, if you like, to allow the defence to recover, which is why I think that got brought back. It would be the same in this. If that drops to someone on the edge of the box and they fire it in first time, then there's never really been the chance to recover. So using that logic, if the ball falls to someone on the edge of the box, they pass it out wide, that then goes out wide to Tav, who whips it in and someone scores. I don't think it gets pulled back because there's adequate time to recover.
Sure.
Does it depend? Seeing that instant, would it depend on what the referee on the pitch at that point deems to be the build-up to the goal, essentially? Like, you know, do they deem it to be, well, there's been 3 or 4 passes or 3 or 4 phases of play, call it, before the ball hits Tav and hits the back of the net? Then does the referee then say, tell you what, I'm going to ignore phase 1, which is, you know, the dubiety aspect, and then phase 2 is the ball hits the Tav, phase 3, ball in the back of the net?
The problem is, mate, it's highly subjective. That's the thing. There's no hard and fast rule about it. If I could give you a sort of rough analogy, it's, you know, the advantage rule when there's been a foul and the team's still in possession. This is something I get grief for all the time as well, because it can either be 1 second or it could be 8 seconds as far as I'm concerned. If the guy picks up the ball and he's getting driven into the corner and surrounded by opposition players, there's no advantage here. So I might give 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds to see if he can get away from that. If he's still hemmed in, free kick, pull it back. If someone gets the ball and within a second, there's no one round about them, and he makes a bad pass, advantage gone. Doesn't matter if it's only 1 or 2 seconds, you know. So there's so much grey area involved that it really has to be a subjective judgment on the day of what you think.
I tell you, I wish all refs had your level of consideration, Gary, and thought that goes into it, because clearly when we're watching it, it doesn't seem that way. I'm going to let you go in a second, Gary, but I just wanted to pose a question to Dino and get his thoughts on something. You mentioned before, Dean, consistency. And we watched in that game. And look, I think we all would like a game that's free-flowing, and there are meaty challenges, and there are things that aren't pulled up all the time. And it's a frantic game. It's a great atmosphere, and it's part of the Old Firm package, if you will, that there will be these tackles and there will be this commitment. There was a couple of instances in the game when Sterling was going through on goal and was seemingly taken out by Scales. There was also a wonderful tackle by Sterling that was pulled up for a yellow card. And yeah, I think a blind person could see that that was not a free kick, never mind a yellow card. Is that the consistency, Dean, that you're talking about? The level of kind of consistency across the pitch? Clearly, we need to assess these in isolated instances, and no way am I trying to link those together. All I'm asking you is, do you think that's the level of consistency that we want to see? You know, if the game is going to be flowing, let it flow. If not, then, you know, clamp down, but at least make it fair.
Definitely, that's got to be, fairness has got to be the number one sort of criteria there. If you think about it, the Sterling one, yellow cards, never a yellow card. I think Gary would testify to that, so I don't need to ask him. But that's, I was thinking about this yesterday, like, so teams that, players that do badly in matches, and then they'll go down, they'll analyse it the day after or whatever in training, and to make better, to going forward, to not do this thing. I don't know how they set up as referees, but that's what should happen. They should all, these things, like, look, well, that wasn't a yellow card. Do you understand? So, like, watching it back, do you understand why that wasn't a yellow card? Or do you see that was a foul? Do you see why that was a foul? Why didn't you give that as a foul? What's your reasons? Right, okay, well, that's fine. I respect that. Well, in future, you've got to give that as a foul because it's a foul. Do like that sort of thing has to happen? I know it might sound basic and might sound common sense, but that's how you're going to get the consistency, because at the end of the day, we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all has got. I think I'm really liking that mindset that they have of the tunnel vision that Gary described. And that you've got to think, in life we do certain things that you're completely tunnel visioned in, and your peripheral vision is not even there. So having this sort of analysation of after the games, because you've seen it so many times, referees, and in England as well, and they've had like 3 honking games on the bounce, and you think, why are you then getting a 4th game? Why, like, if you do crap in your job, you get pulled up by it. You get you get a 1-to-1 meeting, you get this, you get training, you get this, you get that, to make you better at your job. Yeah. So this has to be implemented to the referees. They have to get better at their jobs. And as a football fan and watching your team and wanting your team to win, and you're saying, like, man, they need to do better. Well, it starts with the people that, that's in charge of them to make them better. And, I'm only kind of saying that I don't have much optimism, given that it's Willie Collum that's the man that's that's in charge of them now. But I hopefully he proves me wrong. But that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it, mate. They've just got to start training better, having better communication. In terms of the decisions, and then VAR overruling it, and it's the consistency is just not there at all, and that's what I think we're crying out for, isn't it?
I think so, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Consistency, reflection, reviewing, consistent training. Reviewing these incidents, and as a group, as a unit, asking each other, as the team of referees, what do you think you would have done here? What would have been the right thing to do? Setting clear guidelines and boundaries. Gary, I just wanted to, before you dash off, I just wanted to take your view on what those other instances were that I mentioned. Clearly one through, it's coming together of players, but it does seem like there's not excessive force, but a level of force that is more than just players clashing. And then I guess Sterling's tackle, if you could as well.
Yeah, for me, the Sterling tackle is a great tackle. I don't think there's a foul in there, never mind the yellow card. It's all about what we generally discuss. If I've ever been on with assistants and I'm in the middle, or vice versa, if I'm an assistant to someone, what we tend to discuss pre-match is certain instructions, and generally one that's consistent is always have my tolerance level. So don't have a linesman flagging for every little nitty foul and the ref letting everything go, because it just looks inconsistent and not joined up. And as fans as well, it proves that we want consistency, because yourself, in Scotland, there's fairly meaty challenges going sometimes, but those same challenges are brought up in Europe, whether we wouldn't be in Scotland. But we can accept that almost, because that's consistent. We'll get the same challenges as well, our team. So the consistency is a big thing. It's annoyance for me as well. Like, I used to play centre half at football, so I tend to have more tolerance for physical stuff than someone that's either never played the game or played up front as a winger or something. What I mean? But in the games, I'll be consistent, and I'll let the same challenges go for both teams. And you generally don't get a lot of negative feedback off the back of that if they see it's consistent. In terms of how do you get that, I really don't know. I've seen people mention full-time refs. I don't really think that matters too much, to be perfectly honest. Most leagues
What's that then? What's that, Gary, then? So you mean like a fully employed permanent referee?
Yeah, as they are in England. As they are in England, yeah. I don't think it matters too much, in all honesty, because most leagues aren't full-time, the officials. If you look at a lot of the guys that will be doing the top games in at the Euros coming up or the World Cups, whatever, they're not coming from full-time leagues. You've got like Polish guys from Slovenia, Hungary. They're certainly not full-time, and it's not impacting them too much. So there's something else to be sort of corrected here. And I think the inconsistency is what really infuriates fans, because if you look at Jack Butland's yellow card against St Mirren towards the end of the season, when the guy basically essentially ran into him, that's not consistent with, if you take, and by the way, I'm not saying this was a foul in any way, but Cameron Carter-Vickers on Desslers at the weekend, it's never a foul, it's a great tackle, and he's made a great tackle to save a goal almost. But if you're applying the same logic to the Jack Butland one as the Dujon Sterling one, that should be a foul, you know. So it's the inconsistency that really infuriates fans. And how do you get that? I don't know, because it's just in the moment, and the guy's doing stuff under pressure. I've never been at a cup final level, so I can't comment if I'd be the same. But is there maybe a psychology behind it, rather than look at incidents and learn from incidents, because they're so different and there's very rarely two incidents the same? Is a psychological aspect to keep these guys calm under pressure, and maybe that could be something looking forward to. But it's not the greatest answer, but I really don't know how you get that.
No, I think we can all gather from that there is grey areas. There is, you look at Sterling's tackle was very quick. He came in very quick, and it's almost, if he's given a free kick, does he double down on that by giving him a booking as well, because he thought it was excessively quick? There are nuances in every situation that make it hard, and I don't envy these refs. But Gary, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. Will you do us a favour, and in the close season, we'll get together, have another pod on how we can make refereeing better in Scotland, and take your expert view, because I think we've all got questions on that, and we all want to know the answers.
I'll do my best, mate. I'll bring my notepad that night.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gary.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Yes.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate.
So very insightful and interesting to get another referee's take on the weekend's instances. Mitch, I won't go into too much detail towards the kind of the rest of the game, I guess. I think we all know what happens, and there's a few players probably at fault for that goal at the end, whether it's tiredness, whether it's whatever. I think probably psychological tiredness as well, given the season that we've had. But I wanted to come back to the earlier point that I'd made on the starting 11. So just for reminders, the starting lineup was Butland, Tavernier, Balogun, Davies, Yilmaz, Diamonde, Raskin and Campbell, Sterling, Silva and Dessers. Of those players, who do you think we should be looking to keep and build a team around, or even play a part in the team? And who do you think we should be looking to move on? Because I think a lot of them will be moving in one direction.
So I think Jack Butland, for me, it's a no-brainer. He should stay unless the money's right. As always, every player has got the price. But for me, if you ask me, blanket, money no object, Jack Butland stays. I think Cav, I would have, if he stays, it would be for a transition season. And it would be on the view that Dejon Sterling takes his natural place back on the right-hand side as a right back, with Tav kind of ushering in. Ben Davies is on too much money to be a third choice or a fourth choice centre back, but I also don't feel like he should be a starting centre back, so he's got to go. Balogun definitely should stay. Great round the squad, great for a summer that's probably going to have a lot of high turnover. I think he's great in the dressing room to bring people in. He's Mr. Dependable when we've got 3 games a week where somebody needs a rest, somebody's got a suspension. You just need somebody to slot in against Kelly, Dundee, or whatever on the Sunday lunchtime. You can say, do you know what, Leon, you're up, mate. You'll do 15, 20 games a season tops. That'll be fine. Yilmaz, I would keep, but again, I've got a soft spot for a Maverick, as we all know. For me, Mr. Dessers is going nowhere. Sorry, Scotty, you'll just need to eat that one. Sima, I would take if the money's right for Sima. So for me, the right money for Sima would be 5 or 6 million to bring him in. It's probably going to sound a bit wild to some people to say pay 5 or 6 million for a guy who missed a chunk. I think we've seen enough to justify that. Raskin, for me, stays. Todd Cantwell, 50-50. If he left, I'd be a bit gutted, but I think I've got enough faith that somebody else with maybe equal, if not better quality comes in. Diamande, naturally, he stays. And then Sterling, again, he's going to be staying. Silva, again, Silva's agreement for me worked well for everybody. He came in, we needed a body in, he needed game time. Probably paid too much money weekly for him, but again, he's come in, done a solid job for 6 months. He goes down the road with our best wishes. And no doubt, if some of the clubs that are interested in him, like Milan, Seville, as have been reported, no doubt he'll do very well going forward. And I think maybe his loan up here's done him the world of good in terms of maybe toughening him up a wee bit and teaching him that sometimes you don't have to throw yourself on the floor. Like, it's okay just to take the knock and get on with it. But I don't think I've missed anybody there.
Dino, I'm going to come to you. There was a few interesting ones there, and I'm going to take umbrage in a minute, but I'm just saving my ammunition at the minute to go at you both. Dino, who would you keep from the starting lineup, and even reflect on the subs if you want to?
Butland, Sterling, Dion, Raskin, and Ridvan, obviously, but that's
That's your lot.
That's my lot for the starting lineup. I'd keep. Well, Balogun's obviously staying, isn't he? So
yeah.
The ones that are obviously, I'd like get rid of Cantwell, Dessers. Obviously,
you'd get rid of them.
Silva's. Yeah, I wouldn't even entertain a Silva loan again, even if it was a 6-month loan. I wouldn't entertain it. No. So that's really it for me. I'd sell. I'd get rid of Davies. He's got 2 years left on a contract. He's still holding a bit of value. High wages. Is it possible to put those wages into a couple of other players?
Yeah.
So
Ben Davies is a strange one. I'm gonna just get it out and voice it now. Whenever the guy has played and he's had to come in, he's had a very, very strange Rangers career, right? He's had Beale he wasn't favoured with at times. Clement has had him out in the dark for a long, long time. But defensively, of recent times, him and Balogun next to each other at the back, it's not pretty. I just want to caveat, it's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's not, some wonderful ball-playing centre-back who can bring the ball out and knock it down the wings and sort of marauding runs into the centre midfield. It's not that. But you put Ben Davies as a big, tall lad against some of these, hammer throws in our league, I think he kind of holds his own a bit. I look at him and I look at Galton. I think, God, who would I rather have in my Rangers team? And if there's a distinct possibility that Galton is a part of his plans, then, should Davies be in that question as well, Dean?
No. And I don't think that I've got to disagree. I don't think Davies is physically, the right person for our league. Yeah, you're right. He's good with bodies, feet and whatnot. But I've just seen him. I know you've said he's had an up and down Rangers career, but there's been too many times I've not been convinced by him. So yeah, as I said, we've got to, if Goldson does stay, we can't really be having, and then you've got Balogun. That's 3 players that are 30 and over, or whatever it is. The Davies is close to being 30. We really don't need to be having any more centre halves that are that age. I'd be like to see us bringing in younger centre halves, and then if Suter stays, Suter's also mid-late 20s as well. So there'd be enough experience there for Davies to go. And as I said, he's on quite a decent wage, so that wage could be invested into somebody younger or a couple of younger players. I think it was reported between 25 and 30 grand a week he's on. So I don't know if that's how accurate that is, but it would be wages better spent on other players, in my opinion.
To throw one back at you, if an offer comes in for Connor and Connor goes, you need to keep some experience in the back line somewhere. That I think you can't get rid of Connor and Ben Davies in one window and replace that with a young centre-back. That's probably, for me, you're setting up a young centre-back coming to Scotland probably for failure at that point, because he's not got that experience. They wouldn't have that experience around him. I know you can argue with Suter. that he's got that experience, but I still don't think at this stage of Sutter's career he's the man to help guide another young centre-back in. That's not a knock on Sutter. I think that's more of a, he's now got his own career back on track after the injuries of Hearts and at the start of his time at Rangers. I think he needs to focus on knuckling himself down and keeping the shirt on his own back. But I think if Cora was to go, I think Ben Davies stays. If Ben Davies was to go, I think Cora doesn't go.
It's a conundrum. It's a really tricky one. And I would probably be in a similar mindset to that. I guess the challenge and conversations that we've had before, when does a defender hit his prime, right? Do you want a young defender, being bullied by your Stevie Mays and players of that ilk? Or do you want someone who's going to, be able to come up against them and give them what they need, which is often just a push in the back or a boot into row Z? It's a really tricky one. I also wanted to have a quick conversation on Todd Cantwell. We did sort of touch on him a little bit earlier, but since then, and I guess since the game, we've seen a few clips come out where Clement is kind of dragging him away and seems to be quite aggressive in his manner towards him. We know Cantwell has been hit and miss this season, very much so, but when he hits a very high level, probably a level above the rest of the Rangers team, I would suggest. And we know that attacking players tend to be the ones who earn the big bucks, the creative players, the ones to unlock these difficult defenses. Do you know what? It's a really tough one to call. I think you said 50-50 when you were assessing, or maybe it was yourself, Mitch, 50-50 as to whether to keep the guy or let him go. Where's your head at? I think there will be suitors for him. I think there would be someone that had come in from him probably in the English Championship. So yeah, good to get your thoughts.
Definitely take the money for him.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep, we keep saying that the guy's got talent. I actually thought that was I did quite a solid game on Saturday for me. As I said, I think, other than a couple of the subs, he was probably a 7, like most players, at least a 7 out of 10. Ran his socks off, left nothing on the pitch. But you want that over the course of the season. You don't want it sporadically. You need, again, we'll just revert back to that word consistency. If he plays like that the whole season, we're wanting him to stay. Let's be honest. He's been here for a year and a half. He holds value. Can we use his money to get in somebody who is going to give us, a 7 out of 10 at least throughout the course of the season and turn up consistently in these big games and be the match winner? That's what we want, and especially in the number 10 position, if that's Clement is going to go with. That's a vital part of the team.
Yeah, of course.
That's the playmaker. That's most attacking things go through the number 10. So yeah, cash in on him, and he's annoyed a lot of the fans with his off the field antics, with his social media posts and things like that. Whereas his head's not completely 100% in it, is it? And you need that at Rangers. It's no, we're not a club that doesn't matter if we win, lose or draw. We're a club where it matters that we lose or draw. We need to win every game at Rangers. Doesn't matter who we're playing, and that mindset needs to be instilled in the players. And I don't think he has that mindset within him. So and he turns up, and when he turns up, and he's probably one of the best in the league. Let's be honest. And as you say, there's suitors there in the Championship. So he's I think given how much we signed him for, we would make a profit on him if we were to sell him this summer. And that's something that we've not been doing of years gone by, when signing players and then selling them when we've can make profit on them, or a good bit of profit on them. We could probably make 5 million on him. That I don't think 5 million for him would be too off to.
I don't think it's ridiculous money now. I think you're probably on the money there.
So get rid of him, is in my opinion. And I think albeit it's players that we're linked with, but the markets that we've been shopping in. The Diomande I think Diomande's about 4 or 5 million, and he's coming from Denmark. So we're shopping in the right markets, and that money, you know, I've got faith. You've got to have faith and belief in the Coppin and Clermont that we can actually sign players who are going to give us that 7 out of 10 over the course of 50, 60 games a season.
Yeah, yeah. Mitch, what would your stance be on Cantwell?
I have a different word that I like to use when it comes to Cantwell, and I promise it's one that you don't need looking for. I think it's maturity. And I think that's something that we're probably starting to see, and it has looked. I think sometimes what we see in the relationship between Clermont and Todd Cantwell isn't necessarily that Clermont furious with Cantwell. I think I think he's trying to kind of almost remind him, you are coming up to what, 25, 26 years old. Your social media stuff, scrap it. Get a social media team like Clermont's got himself, where you go post-match, nice picture, great result for the team, yada yada. Like, we don't need comments on his Instagram like shush burgers and all that nonsense. I think if he binned that and put it to the side and focused on pure football, I think there's much better. I think there's a lot more to come from him. But I think the question for me will be, is Todd willing to put the hard work in that Phil demands of him? And I think we've seen enough of him to say he probably does buy into it. I actually think that part at the end of the game on Saturday is actually something we've seriously lacked seeing in Todd. The fourth official was trying to, you know, basically sway the referee to give me a red card for no reason, essentially, other than a bit of a rammy between him and one of the Celtic players. And you say to yourself, if as a fan in the stand, I want to see my players going up at full time asking the ref, like the ref and the assistant refs, why were you trying to tell me that was a red when I done absolutely hee-haw wrong, when the guy on the other side was doing the exact same as I was, yet all he got was spoken to. You know, I think, and I think at the same token, though, I know that Todd's just had a young family as well. I know that obviously he's just had the child, he's been and stuff like that. I think you ask yourself, if Todd maybe this summer, does he ask himself, does he want to move back down south to be closer to home for family reasons? Maybe. But again, as a club, if an offer of, like Dino mentioned, 5-6 million quid comes in, can we afford to turn it down in a summer of a huge rebuild?
Yeah. I think that's very fair. My opinion on it, what it's worth, I think we've been in dream world of expecting 5 or 6 million for Cantwell. I think we'd be looking to get 2-3 million for him, realistically, into a championship team, and look to use his wages, which will no doubt be pretty high elsewhere. But you know, is it better the devil you know? Is it a player that you can mold and shape that understands the surroundings? You know, you do need some consistency in the team, and you need some players who have been there and done it before and felt that defeat before, and that's what, you know, burns the fire within them to not feel that again. Look, we could spend all night talking about this, and we will be having a lot more content from the Rangers Journal in this off season, whether it's new players. Kai is releasing stuff nearly every day, which is really, really great insights into these players that we're being linked with. So please do check them out on at Rangers Journal on Twitter. We'll also be doing a full debrief of the season, where it all went wrong, I guess, and how we can improve on that moving forward. I'm going to wrap up now, Dean. So I don't know if there's any words you want to say to the viewers.
Right, just thank you very much for tuning in, guys. If you haven't already done so, please like, share and subscribe. And as Ross says, there's a lot more content coming, although we're not going to be having any reviews and previews of games. There will be loads of different content, so please stay tuned, and thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks, Dean. And Mitch, a fantastic first appearance on the Rangers Journal. Thanks very much for joining us. Anything you want to say to the viewers?
Just thank you very much for having me for the first time, and hope you guys enjoyed having us on here as much as I've enjoyed being here. I'd see you down the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for watching at home. As Dean said, please do like, share and subscribe. It means a lot. Well, that's the end of another desperate season, I guess you could say. Very much like the Old Firm game at the weekend. I think we had our moments, but yeah, didn't do enough to get it over the line. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Rangers Journal.